Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm really excited. Got a great show in store for you today with Mike McCarthy. And this guy, there's so much we can unpack that we're going to have to cram in way too much value for you listeners in a short amount of time here. So just buckle up. If it's your first time here, welcome aboard. And if you've been listening for a while, this is going to be a jam-packed session. Mike has a wealth of knowledge and inspiration to share with us today, an incredible story from running an expansion team with Keller Williams, overseeing over 11,000 real estate agents in over 50 locations, closing over 25 billion in real estate sales in just 2022 alone. He's also the co-founder of an incredible organization. If you've been listening a long time, you probably heard me talk about it, GoBundance, which is an amazing organization that's absolutely changed my life. He's also the co-author of Tribe of Millionaires, one of my all-time favorite books, by the way. So if you haven't read that, make sure you check out Tribe of Millionaires. He also wrote The Miracle Morning for Parents and Families. And you know how much I rave about Miracle Morning. And I think it's such an interesting concept to take this philosophy of powerful morning experience to your children. And I mean, so much more. So I'm not going to waste any more time or minutes here on this short time we have together, but let's just let Mike introduce himself and share his own story. So first of all, thank you so much, Mike, for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I love what you're doing with the podcast and the book and just building community, sharing wisdom. It's something to get excited about. So just I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here with you and to share with your listeners.
Awesome. So bring us back a little bit, Mike. You know, it's funny, we were talking before we were recording that he grew up in Colorado. I live in Colorado. He lived outside Philly for 10 years, 20 years. I grew up in Philly and now he's in Austin. But talk to me about your journey into real estate through it and where you are today with all the things that you're juggling. There's so much to unpack.
Yeah. So I'm what I like to call an SOB, which stands for son of a broker. I found my way into real estate as sort of following in my dad's footsteps. He was a figure that was a force to be reckoned with in real estate in Colorado. And during my high school career, he built the Keller Williams offices throughout the Colorado area. And then when I graduated college, he had purchased the Pennsylvania region. And so I joined him as his assistant, learned everything I could from him. And then after about a year, I moved to Philly to take on selling franchises and developing franchises full time. And then after a couple of years, he actually moved down to Florida and sort of semi-retired and gave me the space and opportunity to, take on the family business and legacy at the age of like 24 years old. So at 24, I was the regional director of Keller Williams for 3 states. And I would go in and meet with people to try to, top agents to try to recruit them to Keller Williams. And they'd look at me like I was crazy or had two heads, or they'd be looking at like, is there somebody supervising this kid? And it was just me out there making mistakes. So what a beautiful opportunity to be at the ground floor of something that grew as big as it did, and to have a role in like literally pounding the pavement for years and years, meeting people to the point where it finally turned a corner. And now we sell more houses than anyone else in those areas. In my entire region, we sell about anywhere from 15 to 18% of all homes sold come through a Keller Williams franchise. And it didn't start that way. It took a lot of belief in something that, you couldn't see yet. And I believed that we could do it. And I leaned in and chose that as my full-time career. And I actually didn't want to ever work with my dad. We didn't have the best relationship growing up. I thought that sounded like the worst thing ever. But Keller Williams and the way it was structured and who they were as a company was super attractive to me at the time. And the training I could get there was much like getting an MBA plus, because it was on the job training plus training. And so I got to grow up in an environment as a young entrepreneur where things were being scaled, training was dialed, influence was huge. Leaders were true leaders that were grooming me, mentoring me. And I was introduced to so many mentors along the way. And I think it's sort of being around mentors and that sort of energy that led us to kind of create GoBundance on the tail of that. So David Osborne, my co-founder of GoBundance, he was my original mentor in real estate, and he had taken on a region that his mother had purchased and went and struggled to grow it just like I had. So, at 22 years old, I got introduced to David, and it was like, oh, wow, there's this guy that's pretty cool, that's done well in business. Like, I could be like him. Like, I kind of didn't want to be this staunchy, stuffy businessman that I saw my dad or other people kind of portraying. But when I met David, I'm like, I could do it that way. That's a good way to do it. And that became sort of my pursuit of being my own type of businessman, but also doing it with my dad's opportunity and giving me a leg up, but then also not just studying what he did, but studying what guys like David did. And that's how I grew. And I'm fortunate to have had a lot of luck along the way, no question. But at every step of the way, when I go back and look at my story, like I seized the opportunities that were in front of me in ways that others didn't, because there's a lot of people that had similar opportunities, but not all of them went out and built, the number one or two largest and highest market share region that exists for Keller Williams. So we've got a great group of agents. I have an incredible team, and I do my best now to help shine the light and give them the spotlight, those that are still running and leading my real estate company. And I try to make sure that if I'm helping them, it's from the background where they still look like they're solving all the problems and they're the genius. So that takes a little bit of ego management and a lot of maturity, and also focus on others winning instead of just winning yourself. And I do that because of the luck and the help that I got from others.
One of the things I would love to ask you, and it's interesting because this came up in a recent mastermind call where a gal was asking, how do I show up when, I'm closing 4 or 5 transactions a month and I'm in my 20s and I'm working with a lot of first-time home buyers, but every once in a while I get referred to somebody, like you said, who's older than me and more advanced, more experienced, whatever. And I'm feeling this imposter syndrome. And you mentioned belief and just starting with how young you were, what did you need to do to develop that belief? And how did you overcome that inferiority complex of being the youngest person in the room and also the leader of the organization? I mean, those are some big shoes to fill.
Yeah. Well, it's a real thin line between confidence and cockiness. And I don't know how well I rode that line at times. So there's a bit of me that had a chip on my shoulder and was kind of like thrived being underestimated, or sort of like, doubt me to your own perils type of thing. I still kind of get off on that a little bit, like, because I just show up like a normal dude 99% of the time. I don't do flashy things. I don't wear flashy clothes. I have a beard. I'm more of a mountain man, turned business success. I try to approach life from this ultimate level of humility of like, my shit does stink just like everybody else. And, I put my pant legs on one at a time. And so for me, there's just a real honorable way that you can approach leadership where you're just showing up in a way that's respectful. And I think that it's good too as a strategy if people don't expect much, but you're capable of a lot. That can go a long way, that gap there. I've sort of used that to my advantage, and just, I try to play it real straight with people and be super authentic. And there's no tricks or games when you do business with me or you work with me. I'm very honest, maybe to a fault. I'm super direct, but I'm also able to really care about what the other people think. and value somebody else's opinion as much as my own. Just because I might be in an authoritative position in some way doesn't mean that I always have the best answer. And that's something that's not so easy for a lot of leaders to do. They got to have the answers and know what to do. And so, you know, the definition I was once given by a mentor of a professional, to the point of your friend, is her answer to inexperience should be, I may have less experience than someone that's been in the business for a long time, but can I tell you I'm a professional? And let me explain to you what that means. A professional is somebody who, when they know the answer, they give it to you. But when they don't know the answer, they go and find the right answer. That's a professional, and that's the type of person you want to work with. You don't want the person who doesn't know what they're doing and they're not willing to admit that they don't know what they're doing. So in some ways, you embrace your inexperience as a new agent or a new to whatever you're doing, because there's also beginner's mind. I might see a solution that someone who's been in the groove and locked in of doing it the same way for years and years and years, they won't be able to see the forest through the trees. And there's this much easier path to get to what they want. So, you know, I think show up and know that you're capable. You're going to get the job done. And that is also an energetic way of showing up in a situation. You know, you need to know that you're worthy. God would never put you in a room that you're not meant to be in. So if you find yourself somewhere where you're like, oh, there's so many great people here, and you start to shrink a little bit and your light starts to dim, like, you need to remind yourself that, you know, you're there for a reason, and it's not to shrink and be less of who you are. That's the time to rise up and be all of who you are. And just because you know a little less or have a little less experience in some area doesn't make you any less of a person than anyone else or less valuable.
I couldn't agree more. I was actually talking to some of my coaching clients recently about this whole idea of the feeling, that feeling of imposter syndrome, that feeling of like, oh, like, do I belong in this room? And I still get that, because if I'm not seeking out that feeling, I'm not stretching myself. And I truly believe that as human beings, we're here to expand. And if we're expanding, it means we're going into unfamiliar territory, which means it's going to sometimes feel a little bit scary or uncomfortable. But if we try to shrink and avoid that discomfort, we're going against like human nature, which is this expanding desires, and, you know, achieving one goal and having another one come on the heels of it, I think is organic and it's natural, and it should be going after it. You know, it's funny because I wanted to bring this question up about GoBundance, but I'll never forget being at my first GoBundance retreat and wondering, like, how'd they let me in here? You know what I mean? But when I came home from the event, talking to my husband and saying that I was so glad I went, because I was feeling a little intimidated about going. And when I came home, I realized that I have so much to learn, and I also had so much to contribute. And that's an incredible place to be, right? So I want to talk to you a little bit about this, because I do know the philosophy of GoBundance, but I'd like to hear it from you as a founder, and my personal experience of kind of grabbing life big. You know, it's not just about making money. It's about having an incredible family life. It's about present moments. You know, you co-authored one of the Miracle Morning books, so you obviously are intentional about how you start your day and about protecting your energy, and all of that to say, how did you find your way to prioritizing things like bucket list adventures and quiet moments and time with your wife and kids, while also taking this real estate organization to extraordinary heights? Because so many real estate professionals get lost on that train has left the station, and work is like the whale in the bathtub, and life is squished in around the edges. And so talk to me about that. Like, how did you navigate that, you know, the natural experience of being successful in real estate and what it can do to our lives, and then how you found your way to founding GoBundance?
You know, well, this will tie back into some of the things we were talking about, but there's ways to balance and be an entrepreneur and prioritize. Like, there's strategies for that. If we zoom out just a little bit further, there's also the idea of, like, if you run an organization and you're the superstar of that organization, and it relies upon you to work whatever number of hours per week, my challenge to you would be, if you're making enough money and there's a way for you to replace yourself in the business, then why are you not considering that option? And usually there's a whole list of limiting beliefs that I hear people come back to me with, like, nobody does it like I do. I really love the work that I'm doing, even though they're simultaneously telling me they don't want to do it. They don't like partnerships. Partnerships always go bad. They don't want to have to hire somebody. What if somebody makes a mistake, or that person? And it all boils down to one thing, if you should simmer it all down. And that is that there's some part of them that's getting significance from remaining in that role. Because the truth is, no matter who you are and how good you do what you do, somebody else out there can do it better than you can do. And if it's not true today, it's true tomorrow, because ask any pro athlete or anybody who's ran any kind of, like, I was a track and cross country runner. Eventually, the younger guys come up and they kick your ass, and it's tough, right?
Yeah.
This is a life lesson, guys and girls. And so we all have to admit that there's better than us out there. And that if we study the skills of having a big enough vision so that we can attract the talent that comes into our world, now all of a sudden you can have as much freedom in your life as you possibly want. And your business could possibly 10x with you taking a different seat on the bus, called cheerleader, or I help people shine, which is the seat I take. I provide a little bit of accountability, but not much, because my team members are so accountable already. I keep casting the vision of where we're going and why we're doing this together as a team. And then I provide the capital and the resources to pay their bills, give them bonuses, and keep creating opportunity. My job as a business owner is not to go and solve the problems of the business and work in the business and, go out and do the work that the employees are supposed to do. When I do that, I'm actually robbing them of their opportunity to go out and shine and do the work. That's one side of the coin of what you were asking about. And I just want to challenge entrepreneurs to think about, like, okay, well, what is the absolute most it would cost to hire, if you could hire somebody better than you that was perfect at the job, which, let's assume that's possible, which we know it is, but get them to assume that it is. Everyone assume that this is possible. Then how much money is that? Well, let's say that you could hire your job that you have in your own business for $150,000 a year, and you're making $650,000 a year now. Would you take 500,000 instead of 650 if you didn't have to work 60 hours a week or 40 hours and you got to go down to 10 or 15? What's the ROJ, return on joy, for that, of getting to spend that extra time with family and whatever? So that's the side for entrepreneurs and for those that have got to that level. If you're not at that level, you may have to keep hustling and use a different strategy in order to achieve more life balance, which would be, you still got to make sure that you show up for your family before anything else. So schedule trips with them, time with them, dates with them, one-on-one time, lunches with them, meals with them, with your spouse, date nights, weekends away. You basically don't get to have a whole lot of other hobbies. Like, if you're in the grind mode, you're working 60 hours a week, then you got to spend the rest of your time really on family or on the things that you're passionate about, whether, if you don't have a family, like, insert whatever that is, because you don't want to just get to the end of your life and not have done work only. Even if you love your work, like, there's so many things to experience out there. So I think it's a common problem, and it's a great thing to keep, a conversation going about with yourself is, where's the line for me? What does balance look like? Am I pushing too far one direction? Do I need to come back and move the pendulum more to the middle and be a little bit more balanced around how hard I work versus how much time I give my family or my hobbies or my free time.
The return on joy. I love that so much. So what did it look like then? How did GoBundance come to be? I mean, the men's organization, I believe, has over 1,000 members. It's been around, I think, over a decade. The women's has been around, as we're recording this, I think about 5 years, and a couple hundred members. Like, what was the vision there, and how did that even come to be? Because it's created a space for entrepreneurs to really explore these concepts, learn from one another, elevate through association. I mean, so much value that comes from it, and fun, joy, right?
Yeah. Well, it's really not something where we started out and said, hey, let's go build this thing. And we created a business plan and we mapped it out and, we had this vision. What we did is we started doing what we do in GoBundance, which is we got guys together. It started as a boys ski trip. We had like 16 of us get together the first time we called it GoBundance. And it was really fun. It was magical. It was an incredible group of people. And we said, hey, what would it look like if, next year we all brought some more people and we expanded this? So we moved it from Steamboat to Tahoe. And the next year we had 40 people show up. And so it went from like 8 one year, 4 or 5 one year to 16 one year to 45. And then that's when we were like, wow, this is really magical. There's an energy to this that wants to turn into more than just a ski event. And so we followed the essence and the energy, the frequency of what GoBundance was, and it had a life of its own. It was like a little baby. Like it was born not of our own desire or genius. It was something that wanted to come into the world. It was based on the personalities of the people that were leading it and attracting people. And it wasn't about one guru who was trying to bring all these people together under their philosophies and what they thought, which is a lot harder thing to do. And because there's a mixture of owners and leaders and original founders that are very different, and we've been able to stick together and work together, it's turned into something that's, beyond our vision or beyond our control in some ways. So I took over as CEO a couple years in, put a lot of systems and things in place with hopes that we could grow and scale off of that and turn it into something, huge. And we actually invited all of the members in to create the future together. There was about 80 members and we had about 120 people come to an event in Whistler. And we used a method called appreciative inquiry led by my friend John Berghoff, who leads Exchange, a community that you should check out for facilitators and training how to facilitate. But he had us spend 50% of the time during the event that should have been speakers and masterminding that was for the members. And we used that time to let them create the future. So creating GoPods, creating micro tribes, creating family events, creating couples events, creating a group for the wives, creating a women's division. Like all of these ideas came from us being willing to listen to what our members wanted and not pretending like we knew everything and we knew what they wanted. And so then we built this foundation and it started to hum along. We were growing, we had good systems, we had a good team. We hired a few consultants, a couple other CEOs gave it a go. And, over COVID and with some other leadership, like it just exploded, and that we had like a 10X moment where we were recruiting 30, 40 members a month and we were vetting them still. So these were high quality people. And even to this day, we continued to increase the standards of what it takes to get into GoBundance while simultaneously growing the community. And we've launched a women's division. We've launched also Emerge, which is for aspiring millionaires, those who are on their journey. And so it's just this ecosystem called GoBundance that, and even many of our members lead trips and events. And, we have so much going on now that it's mind boggling. Like there's no way any one person could have done this. It's really just members and the elders and owners and dedicated team and staff that really create, to sum it all up, a space where there's no hiding. You have to be authentic. You have to understand that you're not perfect and that you need to bring your challenges, that you're open for feedback and help on, and that everybody has talents and gifts that they also need to be willing to bring. And so there's this beautiful container where we create value exchange at this super authentic level. So we have lifetime partnerships, guys in each other's weddings, godfathers situations. We have people that are the board of trustees for their estates, like, that their families go on vacations every year together, that, all these relationships were built inside of this, this little idea, which was what we were just doing as friends. And it evolved to what it is today. So it's mind blowing to watch what's happened and to see too that, there's a chance for us to have another 10x moment. We have a lot of new things happening right now, and we're launching into a more regional and local chapter model now, with still offering all the things we do within GoBundance nationally. And so the fact that it could even 10x again and have a even greater impact is amazing. And in the beginning, lots of people wanted it to stay small, and this is our thing. And you always have that pressure of like, the early ones in always want it to just be them in. So then it's exclusive. But in the end, we gave way to the value of abundance, which would be like, let's see how we can grow this and see how big it can become without jeopardizing the intimacy. So that's why we instill a lot of effort into making sure there are smaller groups that are always meeting, because that helps build the intimacy. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. Thank you for asking and letting me share about that, because it's something I care deeply about.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary. I was telling you before we started recording that I tried to apply to it at one point. I thought it was I just heard about it and I was like, that sounds cool. I want to be into that. And it was only men at the time. So I'm grateful that thank you, Mike. It was you that had the idea to open a women's chapter, because it's life-changing is an understatement. And I know we're getting short on time here, but I really did want to dive a little bit into how this kind of evolved into the Tribe of Millionaires. I'm kind of curious if your experience in GoBundance led you to write that book, which I read and I loved. And I also aligned with it because in my book, Pursuing Freedom, I talk about having a tribe of trusted, local service providers, but ultimately just building a tribe of people that are on the journey with you, and always seeking out a room where you can hang around people that remind you of your future. Just get in the room with people that remind you of your future. And I read your book. I had so many just hell yes. Like I'm reading it. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So like, I'd love to hear from you as the author, what you were feeling as you put that book together. And I know what an undertaking it is. And I feel like it's brilliant, and everybody listening needs to read it amongst other things that you have out there. But if you could share a little bit about that, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, well, confession to make. As somebody who just pointed out that it's about finding the right who's to do the job, like we actually found the right person to write that book on our behalf. And they went on an international trip with the owners and 10 members to Japan and followed us around and watched what we did and saw how we interacted and heard all the stories that members shared about their experiences. And then he came back from that trip, and within like a month, he sent that to us. And we were blown away at
Wow.
just how well they captured it. And so, like, that's a weaving of real life stories. Not the one story isn't real, like in itself, there's not a through line to that one, but there's bits and pieces of it that are all part of who we are as a tribe, bits and pieces of the story that we all experience some aspect of in real life. And so it's a true reflection of what it feels like to be in GoBundance, all the way down to, which was really odd, and I won't spoil anything, but the beginning of the story is, members of GoBundance are the pallbearers of one of the founders of GoBundance, and the son who was estranged, Ethan. The story is about him realizing his father was trying to connect with them and was estranged, but the son would never allow that. And the story goes that then GoBundance then gives that young man sort of the fatherly advice and the guidance that he never got from his father. But because his father started this tribe, that tribe was there to really guide his son. And to me, GoBundance is like a family. When my father passed away, it was GoBundance members that were the pallbearers, and there was this full circle moment for me of seeing that this part of the story written 5 years ago was now live in a way. And in a sense, our avatar, our ideal customer is the person who's had so much success that probably even their father has trouble giving them advice now. And they've maybe reached a level of success beyond what their father's is. And their friends can't understand or relate to their level of success and what they're doing. And they're not the same kind of crazy anymore, right? So GoBundance is a tribe of lone wolves who otherwise couldn't have conversations about their finances or their challenges, because most people look at somebody who's a multimillionaire and they're like, how hard could your life be? Or you have all these things and it's so successful. And what they don't understand is that it's a lonely road that's complex, and there is a burden to actually wealth that people don't understand. You have to do a lot of complicated tax structures and planning and investing to make sure you don't blow that all, and that it's not all for nothing, and that you can pass wealth to future generations. And that's a whole nother topic. And why we got into the family space is that at the end of the day, I can teach entrepreneurs all day long, but if they don't pass the lessons of leadership and the right structures as a family culture and values to their children, then it means nothing that we impacted their life. Yeah, their life might have been filled with more bucket list adventures and they gave back a little more and they achieved better health goals and things like that. But if they don't create a family legacy, which is based on values and not just financial assets, it needs to include all forms of capital: financial, intellectual, social, spiritual, and even health. Like, these are all forms of capital that I think people miss. And our goal in GoBundance is to make sure people get back to those areas that they might have let go of in order to chase just the financial capital piece of it. So, it's a situation where we all need that reminder, and we all need that person who's willing to not just be our friend, because a true friend will tell you, hey, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. And we all have friends that are nice and we like to hang out with them, but are they the kind of friend who will call you to the carpet and call you up to the standards they know you're capable of? Or are they okay with you just being who you are, because then it doesn't make them uncomfortable? And so GoBundance is for those people that know that there's no more discomfort or push or inspiration coming from who they're around a lot. And if that's you, then you have to find, whether it's GoBundance or somewhere else, a group of people that will hold you to a higher standard and not just give you lip service like, you're doing great, life is awesome, you made lots of money. Yeah, but does your wife hate you and your kids don't feel wanted and connected to you? And how much time and energy have you given back to support anyone else other than yourself? And this is a common thing where these entrepreneurs get isolated, and they're the people who can do the most to impact our world and our society and the way the system is set up. They end up isolated and giving less and less and less back because they're almost ostracized for having wealth and looked at sort of like they have a horn on their head.
It's so good. I highly recommend everybody listening. I also think there's going to be people listening that are going to be interested to explore Emerge. So check that out, because it's like a stepping stone to GoBundance for those who explore GoBundance and maybe they're not there yet, but they'd like to be someday. I mean, we could go on for hours, but I know I need to respect your time, Mike. And I really appreciate you being on the show, sharing your story. And I'm certain that the listeners are leaving this conversation ready to level up in some capacity, whether it's their health or their relationships or their financial or their career. And it's important to tend to all the gardens of life. And so, you know, that's what we're about here at Pursuing Freedom. The goal is to build a life you don't need a vacation from. And I hope that everyone's leaving here inspired to continue to pursue that mission. So thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And one of our books, The Miracle Morning for Parents and Families, has an accompanying playbook that has a lot of exercises you can do at home with your family. But there's a couple free chapters available online. If you go to miraclemorning.com/PF playbook. PF stands for Parent Family Playbook. So miraclemorning.com/PF playbook. If you want to grab 2 chapters of that, including one that helps your family shape your family values together, I highly, highly recommend that. It's a really fun experience, and it cements some values within your family about who you are that make everything easier for you and your family. So just want to throw that last gift out there. Thanks again for the great conversation and the opportunity to be on the show, Erin.
And if folks want to find you, follow you, where are the best places to do so?
It's Go Mike McCarthy on Instagram is my handle. So you can get a hold of me there, or, you know, for speaking engagements or other types of opportunities, you can email my team at mikemccarthy@me.com, me.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mike. Appreciate
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thanks, Erin.
Make it a great day out there, guys. And as always, I love you. I appreciate you. We'll see you next time.